Hi everyone. Today let's discuss different types of structural framing. First I'm going to talk about categories of structural framing in general, and then let's narrow in specifically on the wood and light gauge steel construction and platform framing. Here's a diagram showing all the different kinds of structural systems that are covered in your textbook. In general, structural systems are divided into two different types. There's framing systems, which are made up of small individual pieces put together to totally support a building. And there's mass wall systems, where they're not individual structural members. They are a whole or conglomerate. So let's talk about the framing systems. These can be broken down into two types, heavy and light framing. And really the difference here is the size of the members and whether they're acting individually or as part of a larger structural group together. So heavy framing is when you have larger members acting individually. And examples of this are structural steel framing, for large buildings like high-rise buildings, and also post and beam framing. This could be for smaller buildings and homes. Light framing has a number of smaller elements repetitively acting together to form your structural system. And for example, wall studs. Individually, a wall stud is not that strong, but if you put them together repetitively, they will form a structural unit, a wall together. Also, floor joists. Individual floor joist won't hold that much weight, but when you put them all together repetitively in a row, they form a structural unit. Same thing for roof rafters. And so in the light framing category, we're going to be talking about platform and balloon framing systems. The mass wall systems can be categorized as monolithic or modular. So monolithic is all one piece. And a good example of that is concrete. Once you pour your concrete, it is all one piece. There's no divisions between individual pieces of concrete. It is monolithic. Modular mass wall systems are individual smaller units put together. And so an example of that is masonry. A brick wall would be a modular mass wall system. And we're going to be talking more next week about concrete and masonry systems. So here's our first example from the textbook of platform framing. Now, platform framing is a light framing system, and it is by far the most common framing system in use today for smaller buildings, homes, small offices, anything 3 stories and below. It's most likely to be platform framing. So let's walk through this. I'm going to use my mouse here to point out some different areas. Let's start down here. This is the foundation. It's kind of, the building is kind of cut away here so you can see different pieces. The foundation is here, and then resting on the foundation is the floor system. Resting on the floor system is the wall. Here's a wall system. And then resting on those lower walls is the next floor platform. That's why this is called a platform system, because the structural walls don't go all the way from foundation to roof. They're actually broken at every floor level. So here we have the next the next wall system resting on that upper floor. And here we have the roof system. Each of these is built with individual small framing members, such as the floor joists, the wall studs, and the roof rafters. Let's compare this to the same platform system, but this one is built not in wood, but in light gauge steel. So you'll hear this called light gauge steel, cold rolled steel, or simply metal framing. They all mean the same thing. And you can tell that this is also a platform system. So here is the concrete foundation in this platform framing system. And in this case, they're using a concrete slab floor, so we don't have any floor framing. Here is the wall framing. It is resting on the floor platform. Here is the second floor framing, and then these horizontal floor joists are part of that second floor platform. Here's the second floor wall. And here is the roof framing. Very, very similar to platform framing in wood. These are two different materials using the same framing system. I'll just briefly touch on balloon framing. This system is no longer used. And in balloon framing, the difference between balloon and platform is this wall member. Look, it runs the entire length of the building, the entire height of the building. And the floors are hung off of those walls. So a little bit different detail structurally. We don't do this anymore for a couple of reasons. One is the length of these wall members is extremely difficult to manufacture at this time. And the platform framing uses smaller members and is therefore more efficient. Here's an example of post and beam framing from your textbook. So you can see that instead of a large number of small structural members like wall studs, instead we're using wood as columns and beams. So posts and beams. People really like to use this framing system because it can open up the walls. You can see right here large expanses of glass in between those framing members, and you can really get some beautiful effects this way. It is more expensive. Here's another framing system that your book touches on. It's A-frames. You'll typically see this as a cabin, maybe. And the defining difference between an A-frame and your platform framing is that the A-frame, the walls and the roof are the same thing. So it's kind of one system fulfilling two uses. Thanks. Those are the different framing types we're going to talk about this week. And next week we'll go back into the other side of the framing types with concrete and masonry.